Thank you. So this is what I'm gonna talk about this late hour of the day. I heard you had intense discussions over the day, and now I'm gonna pepper you with a lot of statistics. Well, I hope if someone nods off beside you, just poke them. So, but it's gonna be super interesting. Strong selling point. Starting with some words about the Royal Swedish Academy of Engineering Sciences, or EVA as we say in Swedish. We're the oldest Academy of Engineering Science in the world. We were founded back in 1919. Our backbone is very strong colleague of fellows, 1,000 of them selected nationally, representing academia, business leaders, and decision makers in the public sector. What we do then is basically we are a platform for discussions between academia, business, and the public sector, really identifying key areas for the future and bring together policymakers to decide and give recommendations to mainly policymakers, but also support the decision makers in decision making inside companies and academia. So just some words about EVA then. The reason I was invited is to talk about the new report that EVA has commissioned in order for us to get a sense of where do Sweden actually have our competitive edge? Where are our strengths and weaknesses when it comes to technology? So this is an analysis carried out by Center for European Policy Studies, which is a think tank based in Brussels, who did the research and innovation statistics for the Draghi report, which was published last year. So it's very exciting to have them do a specific deep dive into Sweden and using the same methodology and really digging deep where we have our strengths and weaknesses. And what we did was the methodology is that you select what type of what technologies that you think that you have your edge in or that are of importance for the respective country, in this case Sweden. When they did it on a European level, they selected 30, but since we're such a strong engineering and technology country, we had to increase that number and we went for 48. They saw a bit troubled when we asked them to run the analysis with 48 different areas, because they dig into the data for all the world, and then they had to use all their language models and do this mapping for 48 key technologies all over the world. But they managed, and we were very happy. And before I start, I will just. It's important, the third bullet point here. The report, to be honest, is quite. It's not that important. It's a report where they do some analysis based on the data that they accessed. But these guys, they are very skilled researchers, but they're based in Brussels. They don't know that much about the Swedish research and innovation landscape. So what is key here is actually the data that is produced and is accessible through links that are in the report. So they draw some conclusions. I will tell you what they see when they look at Sweden, and they have looked into other areas. But it's really important that you look into the data yourself. So that is really, this is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to do a sales pitch that I really hope that you take some hours to dig into the data yourself. So it's a data-driven analysis. What they look at are basically 3 data sources. It's patents, publications, and investment data using the Crunchbase database. And caveats, we all know or if you have done this type of research, you know that there are, of course, drawbacks with these data sources. But what is unique here is that you actually have data from all over the globe. So you can actually do comparisons. So this is important why you use this type of data. And it's the same type of data structure and data problem in all the different countries. But, and it's important, the last point here, it's important to note that in Sweden, with all our fantastic multinationals, I see the logos of many of them here looking outside in the expo areas. The data of the investments they do in R&D is not part of this. Not part of this analysis. So you basically have included investments in startup, but not R&D investments of large companies. So that's important to keep in mind when you see the graphs that I will show you now. So when they do all the magic and they do run all their very exciting data analysis with these three data sources and use different methodologies that have been published in Nature and other places, they come up with 1,846 interactive graphs. So this is what you can access when you look at the back of the report. So you should actually start by reading it from the back. But before I show you the data, just a few words why we need this type of analysis. These are the rationale why Eva commissioned this. Really, we see the importance of key strategic technologies as an asset in a new political landscape. For a small country like Sweden, being able to play with the big boys and having access to where decisions are made in the future in the world, having access to key strategic technologies is just one important asset that grants you access to these rooms. So it's really important to be good at these strategic technologies, but it also is extremely important to know where you are good and where you're not. We also see, of course, and I don't need to tell you, that there is a rapid technology change, and especially with the fast development of foundational technologies such as AI, quantum computing, synthetic biology, etc. This is key. It's really driving the economics and societal development. And then also that we have a changing knowledge landscape where there are massive investments in such key strategic technologies being done all over the globe, especially outside Europe, even if we're trying to pick up speed now with the European Competitiveness Fund and other initiatives, but still massive investments are being done elsewhere. And they're also done in a different way, in a much more strategic way than we are doing in Europe currently. So this is a material that is intended to spark that debate. Do we need to do this funding in technological and other types of research in a different way going forward? Then you also have, of course, the resurgence of a dual-use paradigm. Sweden has used to be very good at this, going back to the 60s and 70s with a very strong collaboration between the academia and the defense industry, really being locked hand in hand. That has been divested over the years, but we are now seeing in this new geopolitical landscape a need in order for us to reconnect. And once again, technology is the basis for this new type of interaction between these sectors. So, a lot of introduction. What does the data tell us? I've done this presentation at another place, and then I usually say, well, I'm from an Academy of Engineering Sciences, so of course it has to be very complex pictures, but we're not the one that did these. But this is basically summarizing the whole exercise in one picture. And what you can see on the y-axis is how Sweden fare in these 48 technologies in terms of scientific output, measured by scientific publication. On the x-axis, you have how we fare in terms of our patent portfolios. And the color of the different dots are the level of investments. If they are green, they're above median globally, and if they're red, they're below. And here you can really see, and if you try to, if you look at the character of the different quadrants, you see to the upper left, these are areas where we have a scientific leadership, but it doesn't really translate into investments and patents. If you have on the lower right, you have areas where we have a strong technological leadership in terms of patents, but we are not that excellent in terms of scientific publication measured with the traditional measurement in these areas. And then we have the sweet spot, of course, to the upper right, where we have a global leadership, where we combine a scientific strong position with patents and in many cases also major investments in startups being active in these areas. So this is a summary of what we can see, and as you can see, we have a lot of the areas that are the theme of this conference. To no surprise, but now we have the data as well. We can see them in the upper right corner. Then they also have slides where they try to measure the changes over time. So they look at our position in terms of, now we're just looking at patents. What were our position back in the period 2015 to 2019 before the pandemic, and what happened during the pandemic between 2020 and 2024. And if you have a green dot, then there has been an increased global position. So you can see, for instance, defense technology, there has been an increase. You see additive manufacturing, blockchain technologies, but then there are others where there have been a decline. This does not say how you fared before, but you can see that there has been a decline. You can have the same slide for publication, and here we see a rise but not that intense in many of the areas that are of interest at this conference. So the theme of this conference is digitalize in Stockholm. So I think it would be of interest to look at the region where we're actually situated right now, because this research is done by a researcher that come from economic geography and has done a lot of studies on regional development. So there you can also drill down into data into regional levels. Here they use the classification of EU level, so you have 8 regions in Sweden. And just looking at, for instance, patents, here you have different values on the y-axis and x-axis, and here they measure how on the y-axis you can see how strong you are within the actual technology. Here you can see that in this area we're actually strong in advanced therapies, batteries, synthetic biology, and things like that in the technology itself. On the x-axis, you see how well these areas are connected to other technology areas. And this is important. This is basically a proxy for how strong is your ecosystem. What are the opportunities that you can go use this technology and move into other technology areas. And here you can really see that the things that you are doing here in this area is that you have a strong position in terms of the technology itself, but you also have a strong ecosystem surrounding the different areas. So you have cybersecurity technology, you have data analytics technologies, you have cloud computing, augmented and virtual reality, artificial intelligence, etc. So you seem to be in a very good place when it comes to digital technologies. The same goes for publication. Here they do the same thing using just the publication mechanism, and you have the same areas comes out in the same way. So there seems to be an alignment between what you do in terms of research and also what comes out in the patent portfolios. This last slide that I'm going to show you is where they do a compositive index of all these three data points that they're looking at: patents, publications, and investments. And here you can really see that once again you show up in the upper right quadrant, where you have a very strong position, both in terms of the excellence in the areas themselves, but also in terms of the possibility to develop the ecosystems. And in the words of the authors, here we have the moonshots. You have a strong single technology, but there is a possibility to branch out and build a strong ecosystem. You have the areas where there is a reason to do incremental investments. You have a strong ecosystem, but there is still some lack in terms of the positioning of the area in the technology itself. And then you have the place where you want to be optimal investments opportunities. And here it comes out with AI, Internet of Things, cloud computing, cybersecurity. So it seems like a good place to be. You can grab an extra beer at the after party tonight. So it seems like you're well positioned. And now you're not just saying it; you can back it with data. I will just run through a couple of slides. I will not dig deep into that. It's just to see what you can do, just to give you a flavor of what you can do when you have trouble sleeping, or if you really need to do it for your business life. You can go into all of these different key technologies. You can look at Sweden's position globally. So these are publications in the artificial intelligence sphere. Here you can see all the different publications in the world, and you can see the share of Swedish publications in this specific technology. It's 0.74%. You can do the same for now I just selected software engineering and systems development. These are the patent portfolio. Sweden shows up with readable figures, which is good. And remember, this is globally, so it's 0.77%. Cloud computing investments. Here you can really, you get a sense of who are the big players. You knew it, but now you get the numbers. Once again, Sweden shows up. 0.5%, not bad. And going from the global outlook, now we're in Sweden, just looking at Sweden, looking at what organizations are actually doing the publication in the field of artificial intelligence. And I guess you're very happy since you beat Chalmers Institute of Technology. So that usually is very important in cases like this. It's no competition, but still, it's good to be on top. So here you can see who is publishing in this area. Going further, very interesting, looking at patents in the field of artificial intelligence. If it's going to be, if you do a lot of work looking at a lot of different slides, there are many areas, technology areas, where the picture is a version of this. Ericsson is an extremely important company in the Swedish context, and it really shows up here. So we should be very proud, and if you're waking up a bit nervous, then you could also be terrified. But we should really be happy and proud that we have Ericsson doing a lot of development work in Sweden. These are investments in the artificial intelligence sphere. Here are publication in augmented virtual reality. Once again, you win. So I guess that was a good slide. And here is another version, cloud and edge computing, looking at patents. Once again, Ericsson comes out as a very important company. Well, here is another. I just selected a few. Computer vision, language processing, object recognition, and here we're looking at the investments. So you might recognize a few of the companies here. So to summarize, overall conclusions, and here you see a headline in Swedish. That happens when you translate people slides, not using ChatGPT. So what are the main conclusions looking at? And here is, I would say, a mix of what the authors says in the report, and also some conclusions that we have drawn at EVA. They summarize the Sweden's position as favorable but fragile. I think that's a good way of describing us. We come out with a lot of strengths, and really also looking into report, being at this conference, one reason is the extremely strong ecosystem of Stockholm. It's very important for this picture. So we have a global leadership in many areas, but there are some worrying signs. And we should really recognize that. We are punching above our weight. We are really strong in terms of our innovation activities. But one weak point that come up, and it's really very obvious and really stands out, is that in a lot of areas, there is a very low translation of scientific output into patents and then investment. There is a gap here that I know Sweden we pride ourselves of having very good collaboration between academia and industry, and internationally we have, but there are things to do. We can do more into that area, and we really need to keep on working with those to come up with better ways of doing that. We have a weak position in several foundational technologies, and perhaps this is the most worrying sign. Looking at the summary graph and looking, for instance, in artificial intelligence, we are not performing that well. The same goes for quantum computing. The area that stands out is synthetic biology, where we have a very strong scientific positioning, but we still see a very weak translation into patents. So here we really need to think about what we need to do going forward, because these foundational technologies are the basis of where we do the applications going forward. I haven't shown, but there are other graphs, of course. You've seen there are a lot of graphs, but there you can also see how you link up in a European context, how the different regions link up in terms of publication and patent portfolios to other regions in Europe. And there is also, you can drill down and you can see how they are linked to the best performing regions in other places in Europe. And here we see surprisingly weak international connections in specific, not overall, but in certain areas. So this is something you can really look into. My research group or my company, are we collaborating with the best and brightest in Europe? Here you can get, well, you can see at least on a regional level how we are faring in these different with this perspective. Then in terms of policy implications, we have really good preconditions. I mean, it's like we said, it's favorable situation, but if we're gonna succeed in these foundational technologies and we're gonna keep being strong in these areas, there need to be target investments focusing on these strategic technologies. And this is basically our message to the Swedish government in doing a round for the next research and innovation bill. It's also important now when we have the negotiations of the coming European program, that we know where we're good and that we keep pushing for those areas to have a prominent position in the future European programs. And competitiveness is of course based on international collaboration, and here Sweden, and this is like we need to understand that we're part of the European Union. We joined in '95. Now it's time to actually embrace the fact that we're members, to be present in Brussels, do the policy making, and really push for our views, because we're really good at innovation, which shows up in these slides. The Commission want to listen to us, and they should listen to us, but then we need to be present. We cannot sit back in Sweden and say that we're good. So the starting point, the report is just a starting point. You can look at, if you find these things as interesting as I do, then you can just look at the last slide of the report, and these are just a few of the QR codes and the links, but they're all there. So you just knock yourself out. And the discussion on these topics will continue. EVA's just launched a new policy project where we try to gather a lot of different perspectives called Swedish Futures. It was just started now in September. The launch of this report was really the first building block, and now we're moving forward. So I really hope to see you all in different in different venues and in different meeting rooms to discuss these issues further. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have time for questions, actually.
Yeah.
So I noticed the last question here was, where do we want to go? But what about the how? Like, what are everyone here in the audience listening, what are your recommendations, if any? Like, where should we start? What type of more hands-on concrete initiatives do we need to make a change when it comes to our weaknesses?
I think one thing that was mentioned by the authors, what really I took with me when they did the presentation of the report initially, is the fact what happens if we lose out in our knowledge in these foundational technologies. We will never be the front runners in AI. I mean, that train has left the station, but we need to have the necessary skills, especially in order to move over to like physical AI, or whatever you like to call it, because we're very strong in robotics, sensor technologies, and all these things. A lot of the research being done at KTH and other places, but we need to have that knowledge in order so that we don't lose out that building that bridge into physical AI. I think that's really one thing that I took with me. And then how do we do that? Me personally, having worked a lot with research policy and research funding, I think we need to be much more strategic. Bottom up is great if you don't know what you need, if you don't know what is needed in society. But we have strong research groups, we have strong companies, we have a very vibrant startup system that are actually doing things. Look at what they actually do, where their needs are, and then we need to position the funding and the initiatives more in line with those needs. Not, I mean, it's hard not saying bottom up to a room full of academics, I know that, but still we need to have targeted programs. And having said that, it's not about deciding what the academics should do in their labs or what type of research questions they should ask. But we need to have research in the areas where we have strongholds in academia, in business, and in the startup community.
Yeah. I'm actually part of the board of KTH Ventures, and Lisa Eriksson, who's also part of the board and running that. Yeah, she's entering the stage in a minute or so. And so this is one of the reasons why I'm super interested in sort of taking scientific outputs, bridging the gap between that and investments. I will tell you more about Lisa's initiatives. But can we do anything more there? Like, how can we actually make people with capital meet more researchers and make great things happen between the two?
Yes. Well, it's
just yes.
Yeah. No, but I think that is really important, and I think also recognize the fact that we have reached a level now where there is a lot of capital. I mean, I was moderating a panel discussion in Brussels where we had the Director General of the DG GROW talking about the European Competitiveness Fund that is up for grabs. I mean, we're one of the few capitals and countries in Europe where we have a well-functioning capital market. Use that and recognize that we actually have that. Talk about it, because be proud of that, because then I think we will attract even more people being interested in Stockholm.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, we don't have time for more questions. I have hundreds, but we can take them in the mingling afterwards. Thank you so much, Joakim, for joining us.
Thank you.